Okay, so today we'll talk about three architects, and we'll start with the German Hermann Muthesius, who was born in 1861. Let's read a little bit about him. So Adam Gottlieb Hermann Muthesius, born on April 20th, 1861, known as Hermann Muthesius, was a German architect, author, and diplomat, perhaps best known for promoting many of the ideas of the English arts and crafts movement within Germany, and for his subsequent influence on early pioneers of German architectural modernism, such as the Bauhaus. I have a few pictures of him. He had an interesting wife, from what I read on Wikipedia, and in a way I regret I don't read what is written on Wikipedia. I think she was, I don't know if she was an architect too. No, I think she was a dancer or something. She even wrote a book about it. Anyway, an interesting pair. This was the man, Hermann Muthesius, an intense architect. If I remember correctly, he died tragically at 66 in an accident, I think a car accident. He built a lot of houses, of villas in Berlin and around Berlin, but I couldn't find a lot of pictures with them. And so, you know, that's why my presentation is a little bit shaky, and I apologize for it. This is I don't know, the living room, I guess, kind of, I don't know, unsettling, this picture, you know, because the husband is reading a book, or maybe he is reading a book to her as well, and she's in this contemplative mode, you know, listening. Let's hope he doesn't read just for himself. Let's hope he reads for her as well. Bernard House from 1906 in Berlin, and you see it's well kept. The Germans do not let, well, the East Germans did leave some of the buildings, even important buildings, in you know, degraded and so on, affected by the elements and war. I have seen many railroad stations in former East Germany in ruin, but you know, under normal conditions, the Germans are Germans, and they take care of things, as you can see here. So this is the Bernard House from 1906 by this Hermann Muthesius. This architect is significant, I would say, for the fact that he lived for some years in Great Britain, and he was influenced by the arts and crafts movement, but also by the, you know, the practical spirit of the British, and he tried to bring to Germany in a different attitude vis-a-vis architecture. I hope I have here text. No, I guess not. No, I don't. I regret. But this is important to remember, that he brought to Germany a certain modernity, if we are to call it so. Although when we look at this building, we wouldn't call it a modern building. Yet, looking more carefully, maybe we do see certain modernist gestures. There isn't much ornament, if at all, and there is a certain simplicity of design. And maybe that's why he's considered actually the father of modernism in Germany. And the third architect we'll talk about today a little bit, just a little bit, a Chinese architect born in Japan. He's considered the father of modernist architecture in China. But we continue our short trips through the works of Hermann Muthesius, an architect I am beginning to have more interest in, and I hope in time I could discover more of his works, at least on the web. Kramer House, 1912. again, you know, this is an architecture from more than 100 years ago, still, you know, rooted in what we call tradition. But even here in this building, I think there is a robust, the tectonics of the building have a, you know, in this case more, because it's this stone, it's raw, it's vigorous, it's a vigorous architecture, and in this sense it's a modern architecture. If by modernity we understand you know, the avoidance of you know, the sweet attractions and affections of you know, a passeist relationship with you know, with culture, with architecture, with everything. Here is, I see the building in ruin. Maybe it was ruined during the Second World War, it's possible, if not the First World War. Anyway, again, the Germans in the end triumph even over the most serious disturbances, those of war. Now, I couldn't find pictures. Apparently, he built a village, several houses, if not many, in this Lichterfeld West, but I couldn't find pictures. A few more of his buildings. This is another house he built. And I kind of like this one too, you know, and yes, it has a sloping roof. It has, you know, uses brick. He was an admirer of the arts and crafts movement of Great Britain of the 19th century, the Victorian Great Britain. But you see, even this triangle is very resolute and modern through its rather sharp geometry, not to speak about the plan, which is not, which assumes other angles as well. So it is a building which has a certain level of modernity. Le Ville Berlinesi di Hermann Muthesius, there is such a book published in Italy. He is a well-known architect, but not as well known as others. Here, sorry for the resolution of the picture, but even here, I see something interesting and enticing, and I regret I don't have better pictures. Another building, I think his liking of the triangle, you see here on both sides, is brings in this, because the triangle is a geometrical figure which is not happy to be dwarfed by the square. So the triangle is, even the symbolism of the triangle is about a dynamic form of aesthetics. When you have the triangle manifesting itself, there is a good chance that the artistic or architectonic configuration is not very static. That's what the rectangle is good for. The triangle, sorry, not the rectangle, the triangle. The triangle brings in another angle. So it's not just the 90 degrees angle, but in essence, it's about the power of the diagonal. And we have here several diagonals now here, which result from the triangular frontons. And they problematize a little bit you know, the possible placidity of just verticals and horizontals, although Piet Mondrian was quite good at creating beautifully, well, balanced, but still dynamic paintings with just verticals and horizontals. That is because Piet Mondrian felt and understood, I think, and perceived and expressed the erotical relationship between the horizontal and the vertical. But not too many people had the insight of Piet Mondrian. Anyway, let's read here. This is, I guess, about the book he published. He published an important book about the British architecture that he tried to bring what he learned from Great Britain to Germany by this publication, as well as through further events concerning the castles, their maintenance and usage. You want to bring closer to the greater public the value of rural architecture and cultural accomplishments of the owners of castles in the past. Concerts and exhibitions will serve those aims too. We want to present the cultural heritage of our fathers. We want to show the importance of maintaining this heritage for our generations. Now, I guess he wrote this. Anyway, it's not just about the castles. This is an apartment building he built. And you see here, again, the force of the triangle, even the curved triangle, which is an interesting, element to bring in, a curved triangle. A Tudor house in Berlin, it's this one on the left, on the right, and it's I don't know if it's a block of flats or it is an office building. It looks more like an office building. It's by him in Berlin. Very well crafted, built very well. I think he was an excellent architect. It's just that, maybe also because he died, but until 66, he had time to build. I understood he was also in conflict because often, the black sheep that the great creators or the important creators are, enter in conflict with other architects in this case, or society, and nevertheless he built, and this was done by Hermann Muthesius, and the building, as you can see, is quite well preserved in Berlin, and vigorous. I keep using this word, but I think appropriately. Even these parts which appear almost like columns, I think they are done imaginatively and with that vigor that we noticed even in the previous, pictures that I showed. He didn't give up completely ornament, although from what I read, his reaction to rather decadent 19th century, which used an opulent ornamentation, was well known. But as you can see, he was not totally divorced from what we call the ornamentation of the 19th century. I think this is the last image of this short and imperfect presentation. Now we go to a very different kind of architect, an architect who served the entertainment industry, if we are to call it so, in Great Britain, and who studied at this formidable school named the Architectural Association. Where else? Where else indeed? If you go to the Wikipedia page of the Architectural Association and you scroll down to the bottom of the page and look at the alumni, you will see there who's who in contemporary architecture. In my opinion, if I'm not exaggerating, I think about 80% of the architects who meant and mean something in contemporary architecture went through AA, through the Architectural Association. It was and still is something formidable about that school, with a very open climate, very experimental. And that's why someone like Mark Fisher, chose the path he chose, and he became quite famous. Let's read a little bit about him. He's called the architect of rock. Why? Because he created stage design for rock and roll celebrities. So Mark Fisher, all those titles that in Great Britain matter something. was born on the 20th of April, 1947, was a British architect best known for his rock music stage sets. He was born in England. Fisher graduated from the Architectural Association School of Architecture in London in 1971, so he was a colleague of Rem Koolhaas and Zaha Hadid and so on. He was a unit master at the AA school from 1973 to 1977, so for 4 years. He also taught in this formidable school. In 1984, he set up the Fisher Park partnership with Jonathan Park. The partnership was dissolved in 1994 when he established Stovefish, the Mark Fisher Studio. I guess, you know, but it's a funny name for his office, so to speak, Stovefish, you know, from studio and Fisher. Fisher designed stage sets for Pink Floyd, including In the Flesh tour performed live in 1977, the World Tour performed live 1980-1981 with Roger Waters and Gerald Scarf, the Division Bell Tower Tour 1994, the Rolling Stones, including Steel Wheels, Urban Jungle Tour 1989, Voodoo Lounge Tour 1994, Bridges to Babylon Tower Tour, Bigger Bang Tour 2005. I guess he collaborated extensively with the Rolling Stones. Mylène Farmer Avant que l'ombre, I don't know who this is, in France. Tina Turner, U2, Pop Mart Tour, and the U2 360 Degrees Tour, and for the 2012 Diamond Jubilee concert, Madonna in 2012, Lady Gaga 2012, Born This Way Ball Tower, and for the Metallica's Death Magnetic Tour. In 2000, he created the Millennium Dome show with Peter Gabriel. He has designed opening and closing ceremonies for the Olympics in Torino 2006, in Beijing in 2008, the Genesis Turn It On Again tour, the $1 Million Piano for Elton John and the Asian Games, and stage sets for theatrical shows, including We Will Rock You and both Ka and Viva Elvis by Cirque du Soleil in Las Vegas. He designed the stage sets for Laura Pausini's Inedito World Tour. Fisher also designed Lady Gaga's Born This Way Ball Tour stage. The stage consisted of a large medieval castle that moves throughout the concert. You know, I will be honest with you. I think even if you are so-called very serious and very profound, you know, citizen of the world with little concern for pop culture, little concern for rock and so on, I think very few people in the present, and not just in the present, but in, you know, in the recent years, were not affected by what is called rock and roll. I know Wolf Prix was and is. I think deep down he wanted to be a rock and roller, but he tried to be a rock and roller in architecture. The truth is, this part of our life is an exciting one, often, you know, and with a lot of energy. Let's rock the world, you know. And for example, when I went to Vienna 3 years ago with some students in architecture, one of them asked me, well, what could the architect do to be as famous and as, you know, a public figure of the, you know, of the stature of, let's say, Mick Jagger or Lady Gaga or, you know, Elton John and so on. And I smiled because, you know, it's not easy, you know. Even the best known architects, you know, are kind of shadowed by these, you know, idols of the public, these musicians who give us the illusion that life could be more interesting, more dreamlike, more intense, more like rock and roll. So let's see. Fisher designed the Handshow Theater in 2010. Fisher and his team worked closely with the client, designing a viable building alongside their vision of innovative technology and exhilarating spectacle. Fischer died in his sleep on the 25th of June 2013 at the Marie Curie Hospice in Hampstead. But why was he there? Because he wasn't not so old. I guess he was ill, leaving an estate before taxes of more than 7 million British pounds. His design for Elton John's diving board tour debuted posthumously. Now, I took this text for Wikipedia, so sorry for the mention of the money, but you know, this is what you know, our time is so interested in. This was the man, the one on the left, with a member of the U2 team. And I'm sure it was very exciting, you know, to work with these, you know, with these musicians, to you know, externalize architecturally in terms of stage design some of the longings and dreams and so on. Here he is. Of course, this kind of temporary architecture is you know, part illusional, part delusional, but we need the dream, you know, we need the dream. You know, I'm not a great fan of, you know, succumbing to the often superficial seductions of this sort of thing, which are close to what we call fantasy works. But fantasy is also part of life, you know, the fantastic, in as much as the dream and the nightmare are. And we cannot say no to them. They are part of who we are. And if we cannot bring the dream and the longing and even sometimes the anguish into our works, then I think we impoverish our work and ourselves, our creative life. Here he is as a younger man, you know, successful and, you know, a little bit cocky. And you have to understand, this man was part of that ambiance. I mean, even Zaha Hadid, she was, you know, very involved with the mundane society, with fashion designers and so on. So here he is with some kind of a clothing that he envisioned and, you know, created. Why not? Again and again, we need imagination, we need joy. It's not about anything else, actually. It's about joy. Do we have joy in our life? Do we have joy from working in architecture? Can we express ourselves in our architecture, temporary or otherwise, our aspirations? Can we find joy? And if we don't find joy, then I think we should think twice about what we are doing. Joy is immensely important. And even Beethoven, now he arrived at the ode of joy through suffering. He was deaf when he composed the ode of joy, but he was aspiring towards something which in the essence was the light at the end of the tunnel, joy. Even Friedrich Nietzsche said that, you know, the human being is the most entitled to laughing, meaning, you know, to have joy, because he suffered the most. He expressed himself in his paradoxical way, but I understand. Nikita Stănescu said, darkening darkness, thus the gates of light. In the end, we all aspire towards light, towards joy. And if we don't have that joy, I think we deprive our existence and our work from something that should be actually the highest aim. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that in this, you know, rather curious, bizarre almost piece of clothing that Mark Fisher designed should be seen the highest aim of creativity. But again, playing is important, to play and work and play. Here is playing too. You know, why do we need music? Why do we need that music? Why do we need, you know, to fill stadiums? Okay, not now when we have the pandemic still, but you know, until the pandemic, I sometimes watch, you know, and I'm a little bit envious, you know, that I don't know, Dire Straits or Creedence Clearwater Revival, they fill stadiums, and the energy, the excitement, all those people jumping non-stop for hours, 3-4 hours jumping, people of all ages, not just teenagers. Why were they jumping? Well, they were jumping because they felt like it. They were inspired. There was excitement. Could architecture make one jump? Well, not so easily, but I think great architecture. I remember myself when I came, when I had the chance to visit a villa house of Le Corbusier, of Frank Lloyd Wright, that I didn't know of, in Niles near Chicago. And I discovered it, when we finally arrived there, I began to dance actually around the building because I liked it so much. I recognized the excellence, you know, I recognized its poetry. It is a great building. It's less known than the Falling Water, but in my opinion, in some respects, perhaps better than Falling Water. So it is in the power of art to warm us up and to make us, you know, more alive, more energetic, more inspired, and so on. So look at all these people here at the bottom, you know. Of course they were excited, you know, they stood up, they didn't sit on chairs, you know, for hours sometimes. Yes, these rock and rollers are to be envied indeed. Some drawings of Mark Fisher. This is a drawing for the, you know, the wall tour of Roger Waters. You probably saw the video if you didn't actually see the concert in Bucharest. When he performed in Bucharest, I launched actually a competition, house breaking the wall, a house for Pink Floyd. And we received almost 100 projects from many countries. Interesting works. Anyway, drawings by these graduate or alumni from Architectural Association. This school which refuses to give up dream or to give up on dreaming. I'm not trying to say that architecture should always be like this, because of course architecture is concerned with many issues. You know, you are not going to design social housing, you know, like a stage design for Pink Floyd or rock or Rolling Stones. Although thinking twice, maybe I should ask, why not? What if we design, or the architects design, you know, social housing kind of similar, animated by the same energy that a stage design for Pink Floyd or Rolling Stones might have. Drawing entertainment. Here is strangely, I couldn't find too many pictures with sufficiently good resolution. Maybe they were copyrighted, I don't know. This is, I guess, the castle that was moving in for the show for Lady Gaga. Here is another fantastic structure that he built, I don't know for whom. Anyway, the other worldliness of these structures serve our need for the other, for escaping perhaps. In my opinion, art is not about escaping reality, but plunging even deeper into a reality, into that part of reality where the fantastic is not banished. And we need a fantastic as well, because it's part of life. Sometimes what happens in so-called real life is more fantastic than what we call the fantastic. So anyway, an interesting man, this Mark Fisher. And, you know, I think the relationship between architecture and music architecture and even, yes, specific kind of music like rock and roll is perhaps worth contemplating. And look at this. I mean, no architect in the world, doesn't matter how good, would be able to bring in, you know, so many people around the building. It's impossible. Music can do it, but it's true. Music does it temporarily, you know, for 2, 3, 4 hours, maybe. But architecture is also concerned with a certain amount of lasting. It lasts. This is temporary, but the intensity, the incandescence, the exuberance of those 2, 3, 4 hours are impossible to match with any other art. I remember Bernard Tschumi saying fireworks are the best architecture. Now, on the other hand, when I sent images with the protests in Piazza Victoriei in Bucharest in 2017, immediately after the tragedy at the Collective Club, at the Club Collective, I sent some pictures with those 200, 300 thousands people in the capital of Romania to an architect in France, a good architect, Brendan McFarlane. And when he saw those pictures with 200, 300,000 people with mobile phones up in a beautiful connectedness and togetherness in protest, he said, this is the best architecture. And it was kind of in the same spirit, you know, like the best architecture of fireworks, the best architecture of what we look at here, or the best architecture of what happened in 2017 in Piazza Victoria, because it's about the inner fire, the fire of passion, the fire of fighting for a legitimate cause, the fire of imagination, and so on. So there are, if I had more time, I would have added other pictures, but this is just a short introduction in the work of this rather unusual architect who decided to, you know, to work for temporary installations for famous musicians. This is for Pink Floyd or for Roger Waters. Okay, and now we go to the third architect. As I said at the beginning, these are, you know, rather short presentations, but we thought of them, we think of them, and we pay homage to these architects. And maybe it's not entirely futile what we did and do. Now we talk about an architect, a Chinese architect born in Tokyo, who is considered kind of the father of modern architecture in China. Although when you will see his works, just like the works of Hermann Muthesius, you wouldn't really call them easily modern, but you have to understand, you know, it was beginning. So at the beginnings of anything, there is, if not hesitation, but you know, a certain lack of, you know, excessiveness, because it's a beginning, not yet crystallized modernity. So I don't know if we can find the correct pronunciation of his name here, Liang Sicheng. I guess in China, the first name is the family name and the second name is the first name. Born in 1901 and he died in 1972 when China was clearly a communist country. I like this picture of him that I discovered on the web. A very passionate architect and very knowledgeable. He is considered even the first, one of the first archaeologists in China. So let's read about him. You see, he was born on the 20th of April 121 years ago. Liang Sicheng was a Chinese architect and architectural historian known as the father of modern Chinese architecture. His father, Liang, you read it, was one of the most prominent Chinese scholars of the early 20th century. His wife was the architect and poet. Let's read this again. The architect and poet. Very, very nice. Lin Huiyin. His younger brother was one of China's first archaeologists. Sorry. So his brother, I remember something, but I didn't read carefully enough. So his brother was one of the first archaeologists. What can we say? I think in China there is still, and there was even under the communists, a great respect for scholars and even poets. They had in their ancient history, you know, important emperors who also practiced calligraphy, poetry, something which is not done very often, and certainly not in the present. In the present, most presidents are, you know, and they are presidents, of course, they wear gray suits and, you know, white shirts and ties, and they are lawyers or, you know, bankers, or you are not going to find in the present, you know, unless you talk about the Arab world, perhaps there are some eccentrics there who are also practicing poetry, like the leader of Dubai. But in the Western world, no way. Anyway, this architect, as he was born in a family of intellectuals, and this mattered. So Liang authored the first modern history on Chinese architecture, and he was the founder of the architecture department of Northeastern University, that is in the United States, in 1928. I think in the United States, because I know there is the Northeastern University in the United States, but maybe there is one in China too. And Tsinghua University in 1946. He was the Chinese representative of the design board, which designed the United Nations headquarters in New York City. There was Le Corbusier there too, and Oscar Niemeyer, and of course, Wallace Harrison. There were important people there. So the fact that he was part of that group says a lot. He, along with his wife, Lin Huiyin, discovered and analyzed the first and second oldest timber structures still standing in China, located at Nanshan Temple and Fogwan Temple at Mount Gutai. I have to tell you something. I have a German book published in 1928 about China, Baukunst und Landschaft in China. It is one of my preferred books. It is beautiful. Images of old villages in China are unbelievable. And China has at this moment hundreds of thousands of old villages, many of them deserted, but there is there an incredible potential for a development of architecture. And I'm not the only one to say so. Wang Shu, the celebrated Chinese architect, said kind of the same thing. I think China, if China, well, I understand its need to develop quickly Manhattan-like cities almost overnight. If China turns its economic power and certain wisdom derived from its long history and culture towards its many very, very interesting villages, I think we would have a revolution in architecture. I truly think there is great potential in rurality. And even Rem Koolhaas, with his latest show at the Guggenheim Museum, which was about the village, about rural life, seemed to think in the same way. I even proposed to the schools of architecture here to have a department or the faculty of ruralism, not just urbanism, but also ruralism. I think there is great potential there in the villages of the world, those that are still alive, because of the closeness to nature. And we need nature, we need oxygen, and we need the village. So I truly think rurality is of great importance. Anyway, so this architect from China, he is recognized as the father of modern Chinese architecture. Princeton University apparently said this, which awarded him an honorary doctoral degree in 1947, issued a statement praising him as a creative architect who has also been a teacher of architectural history, a pioneer in historical research and exploration in Chinese architecture and planning, and a leader in the restoration and preservation of the priceless monuments of his country. Here he was as a young man. I think he was born in Tokyo, and we see a picture of him in older age. And here he is. This is a picture of him and his wife, architect and poet. And I will say it again, architect and poet. You know, how many architects today write poetry? Very few, very, very few. Although graduate from Bucharest, was an important poet, Daniel Turcea. And to my surprise and joy, and also a little bit of embarrassment, I found out about him when once in Paris, I was stopping in front of a stand with books. I was with a bicycle. I stopped because I saw some little books on poetry, which I liked, the way they looked. And there was one with Daniel Turcea. And I knew nothing about Daniel Turcea. But the translator into French also was Romanian. And it was a beautiful discovery that an architect, and unfortunately he died very young, 20 something. Daniel Turcea was a mystical poet, a religious poet, but he also studied at the University of Architecture in Bucharest. So back to Liang and his wife, Lin, I think. This is a monument. It was really very, very hard to find, and I couldn't identify them. It's possible because of course, I don't know Chinese, and some pictures were, you know, the text was in Chinese, so I didn't know what I was looking at. But I do have some pictures here. This is a monument for this person from 1929 that he built. It's a tombstone, a monument. Of course, the exoticism of the language, graphically speaking, is in itself enticing and interesting. Now, the hall and library, this provincial university, in 1930, I only found a few black and white pictures, very small resolution. It's true that for that time in China, this looked kind of like a modern building. Again, sorry for the pictures. I couldn't find, you know, new. I mean, I don't know if the building still exists. Further research is needed, but I think it is important to also know architects from other countries, other cultures, other times, because architecture is not reducible just to post-Renaissance European culture. No, a geological building and female dormitory at Peking, Beijing University, 1934-1935. Well, this looks modernistic, all right, indeed. It almost looks like a building built by the, you know, the functionalist Hans Meyer, who was the second director of the Bauhaus. You would be surprised, no, that a teacher of history would build something like this. But I think we see all the reasons why he was called the father of modern architecture in China. It's just that I couldn't find for the time being enough pictures to convincingly show this. But this is a modern building in small resolution. black and white, but it is definitely a modernist building. Now, this memorial hall from, I think I missed a number there after 1960 something. This is very different from what you saw earlier. And I don't know exactly what he did here. Maybe he built, you know, a building in, I don't know, 1960s, because he died, I think, in 1971 or 1972, that related to the traditional architecture of China. I don't know enough at this point to say more about it. I did read that he was advocating a Chinese architecture. He was even, you know, commissioned to investigate and promote, you know, from a nationalist, you know, positioning, a Chinese architecture. And he arrived at the conclusion that what we call Chinese architecture is mainly derived from an architecture where the roof is ample and it dictates the aesthetics of the building. And that's what, in a way, we see here, an extended roof of a certain amplitude, this roof. So it's a roof architecture in good measure. Of course, it's not the only architecture in the world where the roof is important, but in China and also in Japan, the roof, you see, nobody forced him to, you know, curve the roof towards the corner, but the corner is a very important part of the building. And, you know, aesthetically, structurally, even, you know, metaphorically, do we ask ourselves what the corner of the building is in a way the most vulnerable part of the building, but it's also the most structurally important. And so the roof also in the corner becomes a little different, at least for this building in the center or at the top. The roof architecture of China is worth exploring, and perhaps not just of China. Now, we end this very short and almost inadequate presentation with a picture. There is this prize in China from 2020, Liang Sicheng Architecture Prize, which bears his name. But the picture associated with the prize is actually of his library. I'm a little bit confused. I don't know where the picture was taken from, but I like what I see because of the drama of these huge rocks, these huge stones. And I guess his building is what we see through this opening. Anyway, a dramatic nature, and drama is always, here is a picture of him at a you know, investigating you know, an old structure. I like old pictures in general, and you know, this reminds me a little bit of a picture I saw of Le Corbusier on the Acropolis near a huge fallen column. You know, the architect smells architecture, so to speak, in the vicinity of such relics, you know, and what we look at here is indeed impressive, even if this is broken, or maybe even more so because it is broken. And I said a few words about the roofing. Well, here also the coiffure of the building, to use a rather questionable word, the top part of the building matters, because the top part of the building is that transition between the terrestrial aspects of the building and the celestial ones that hopefully it might aspire towards. And I think this is the last image of this presentation. Library of, we already discussed a little bit about it, of this so-called normal university designed by this architect, is the same picture, but you know, seen a little bit from further away. That's it. So let's wish him happy birthday, and I thank you for being here today.